Pro-life talk. Real world answers. This is Life Report.
Welcome to Life Report. I'm your host, Josh Brom. We're here again with Jonathan Keller, Executive Director of Right to Life of Central California, and our special guest and friend, Kristi Burkhart, the Executive Director of the Fresno Pregnancy Care Center. Welcome back, Kristi.
Thank you, Josh.
Before we get into our topic, just real quick again, because I know a lot of people aren't just listening on like podcasting, they're listening on radio and TV. I think a lot of times people then just kind of accidentally end up listening to us. They might not be hearing every single week.
Right.
This is our second episode with you, and really people ought to go to prolifepodcast.net and listen to the first one, because you're going to completely change your perception of pregnancy resource centers, I think, if you have negative perceptions. But go ahead and tell us again real quick, what is a pregnancy resource center, and describe a little bit what you do in Fresno.
I think the thing that most pregnancy resource centers across the country do is the free pregnancy test and the option counseling and the resources and the referrals in their community, as well as like classes, parenting classes and mommy stores. So that's kind of similar. There's a lot of us that have gone medical, and then we have our medical license in our state. And with that, we provide pregnancy verifications, and we also provide the limited ultrasounds. So that's kind of generally what we all do.
Before we get into today's topic, we're going to be talking about how to reach people that are in crisis pregnancies, because obviously Kristi is going to be an expert on this subject. This is what she does. But before we do that, I want to talk briefly about something that's completely separate. And I'm glad that you're here for this, Jonathan, because I think there's something unique in Fresno. I didn't think that until other people from outside of Fresno were coming in doing speaking, like pro-life leaders, like I remember David B. Wright from 40 Days for Life noted this. There seems to be something unique, which is that the local pregnancy care center and the local Right to Life group are not like in a war with each other, or at least like we like each other and partner together on certain things and work together and support each other. And apparently that's like unfortunately not a common thing. So I want you both to speak to that. Why is it that we're working together? I assume as directors you both have been kind of purposeful in that, but I know a lot of places there's either, like at best, there's a concern for competing over donors, or sometimes at worst, maybe there's even competing ideologies. And so why do we have what we have here in Fresno, and how can other people maybe try to do the same thing?
Well, first of all, if you're talking about the donors, I think that there's always, in God's economy, there's enough to go around. I don't know if that's something that is great for the podcast, but that's how I see it. So I don't think that we need to struggle over donors. And I think that there are occasions where we even have the same people at our events. And they usually choose which of the organizations they're going to give to or support financially overall. And we even share a few volunteers that come into both of our organizations and really help promote us in the community and are there for us for our events and support the events. And I'll let Jonathan kind of talk more about the ideology, because he's really good at that.
Well, I've just really enjoyed being kind of a co-laborer with Kristi on all these different things over the last few years. We both were working for our respective organizations for a while. When did you start with Pregnancy Care Center?
January of 2009 is when I officially took this position as executive director.
And I in January 2008. But then before that, how long were you with Pregnancy Care Center?
About 9 years.
Okay, and I was there about 5 years prior. So we both kind of had a similar trajectory, and I think it was helpful that we both kind of came into the positions at around the same time. And I think I remember I'm evangelical, and I think sometimes there can be. I apologize for all of our non-religious listeners out there, but just to clarify so people understand a little bit of some of the differences. Frequently, there can be sometimes a divide seen because a lot of pregnancy centers are evangelical or Protestant-based. A lot of Right to Life groups are Catholic-based.
Right.
There's some generalities that are true that in this situation. However, we've really made a concerted effort to say that regardless of your denomination, regardless of your religious faith or your political views, we really want to be able to work together, because we really view each other, I think, as kind of two sides of the same coin. And we really want to make sure that we are able to kind of promote each other's missions in a complementary fashion as much as possible.
That's right.
And one of the things that I love so much, a perfect example of this is something like 40 Days for Life. We just got done here in Fresno with our fall 40 Days for Life campaign for 2012.
Fifth one, I think.
Yeah, fifth consecutive campaign. And that's something that our organization loves doing. We love being out there in front of Planned Parenthood, offering a peaceful prayer vigil, offering resources and support. And one of the first flyers that we hand out to anyone who comes up and is willing to talk to us is a Pregnancy Care Center brochure.
Right.
And I like to kind of joke that we're kind of the advanced marketing team for the local Pregnancy Care Center. And because of your bylaws, like we talked about in the last show, some of the rules and regulations with CareNet and NIFLA and everything, you're not able to actually have staff members officially out in front of Planned Parenthood or something like that.
That's right.
But we're able to kind of fulfill that role and provide that help in a way that matches with our mission and bylaws.
Well, and I think you're out there doing that education on site, but if you just did the education on site, there's no resources for them.
Right.
You're just giving them that information and saying, so now good luck with that.
Yeah.
When you can then send them to pregnancy care centers or pregnancy resource centers, then they have the practical assistance that they need. They have some of those medical services they need, and that we can help connect them to a doctor and to the social services that they might need. Plus we have the classes. And so then they're getting that practical help.
Right.
Yeah.
The way I've said it, and I don't think this is original. I think I heard someone say this a long time ago, and I just picked it up. But pregnancy care centers are stopping abortions every day, and Right to Life organizations are trying to stop abortion. And you need to have both functioning, because it's going to be a while, especially based on the last election that just happened. It's going to be a while before abortion is no longer a legal option in many states, and maybe that'll never happen in California. But you need to have something to send people that are going through these circumstances. And I think it kind of shows people that we don't just care about babies, but we care about women too.
And I think to a certain degree, it's a little bit of a difference in a good way between tactics and strategy. I think that a lot of times, I don't know if you ever feel like this, but Josh, I know sometimes I feel talking to big pro-life leaders at a national level, they have these big grandiose plans, and they'll say, well, we've got this 5-year plan to end abortion in America, or a 20-year plan to, all these different things. And that's great. It's really important to have long-term vision. It's important to cast a bunch of ideas for you to follow. However, a 20-year plan doesn't help the 15-year-old young lady who just found out she's pregnant and needs help today.
Right.
And that's where the tactics and the resources of pregnancy care centers are absolutely vital.
And I think, too, that, for me, I'm not a politically oriented person. I am really about one-on-one relationships.
Yeah.
So I can care about life and understand that there's something in our nation that needs to change, but that's not going to motivate me personally to do a lot.
Right.
I want to be working one-on-one with people.
Yeah.
And I think that we're wired and geared or created differently and have different purposes, and that's why we need both.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say in regards to that is actually our pregnancy center here in Fresno, we have both Protestants and Catholics on staff and as volunteers.
Yeah.
So that
true of us,
merge. Yes, and that's true of you guys too. And I think that is something that is very unique to this area. And we would love to share that model with other areas of the country, because it can work, and it can work beautifully.
Yeah. And I would just encourage you, if you work for a Right to Life group or volunteer for a pregnancy care center, really make a concerted effort to try and attend each other's events. I know I make an effort, most of our staff makes an effort every year to try and attend as many pregnancy care center events as possible, whether it's the Walk for Life or the banquet. And Kristi usually comes to our Christmas dinner. And then together there's a third person who's not here, but we have an adoption agency we partner with locally, and we try to usually attend Stephanie Grant's events as well.
That's right.
So it's
just the support and encouragement.
Yeah. Let's get into our topic, reaching out to women that are in crisis pregnancy. Kristi, start us off by describing What is the situation like, or the experience of a girl who just found out she's got a positive pregnancy test and she wasn't planning on getting pregnant? John and I were talking about this yesterday. I like the way John said. He said sometimes we think that pro-life people kind of straw woman this person. Like we have these misconceptions about her and her experience. So will you describe for us a little bit what is this woman experiencing? What do maybe sometimes pro-lifers, what kind of misconceptions do we sometimes have about this girl, and what are the reasons oftentimes she's maybe wanting an abortion?
Well, I think that we have to even back it up from there, because when she walks through our door, she really doesn't know if she's pregnant or not most of the time.
Oh, okay.
So something has been happening in the recent days or weeks ahead of her walking in that is making her question whether she's pregnant.
Right.
So she comes through our door and she fills out an intake form, and we take her back to a counseling room. She very quickly provides a urine sample for testing, and now we're sitting with her while that's being read by a nurse, and we're talking with her about her options. She's fearful. There's usually people that don't know she's there. Not always. Sometimes she has people, and this isn't every client either. Some clients come in hoping they're pregnant, because we don't qualify our services depending on who you are, or whether you're going to be happy or not happy about a pregnancy. But our typical client that's considering abortion is going to be unhappy with a positive test.
Right.
And so she's obviously distraught. I mean, who wants to go through that procedure?
Right.
Nobody comes in thinking, well, if I'm pregnant, I'll just have an abortion. They're thinking, if I'm pregnant today, I have to make an appointment somewhere else. I have to get there. I have to not tell certain people. What if there's a complication? How am I going to get there without my parents knowing?
Right.
They're going through all this stuff, and we're going to sit down with her, and we're going to listen, and we're going to, hopefully provide her with all of the education that she needs. But we're also going to hopefully give her an opportunity to just take a deep breath. And to realize that there's resources and there's help for her, there's options for her, and she's just, whether she even wants to admit it to herself or to us, she's feeling in conflict and in turmoil.
What are some, because you're around, literally have been around thousands of girls that like what you're describing. What are some common misconceptions that you think some pro-life people that have not been around women in crisis pregnancy have about them?
I would say that they see them as hard and cold, that they see them as selfish. I think that that's one. They really think that these are just a lot of selfish girls who really don't care about their promiscuity. That's the other thing, that they're all promiscuous.
Right.
And that they're more concerned about buying a Coach purse or getting their education than they are about life in the womb. These girls come in, and a lot of them really don't know how early life begins, and they don't believe that it begins at conception. They've never been taught that. So, they really believe that it's a blob of tissue.
Right.
They don't know. And as we go through the counseling session, they're teary-eyed. I don't really know how to tell you other than they're soft.
Yeah.
They're not hard.
So on this show, we typically are talking about philosophical arguments and how to have Facebook dialogues, and so this is a little bit different. But this is why we want to do this show. Is if you're listening and your friend becomes pregnant, like if you're a teen, like we've got teenage fans, then you're not gonna. I don't think you probably ought to start with like high-level metaphysical arguments, right? And so, Kristi, how can someone in that situation practically help someone when their friend becomes pregnant?
Well, there's a couple things. One is that you're listening to this podcast, and so this is going to give you a heads up as to how to view that person. And if it's your friend, you pretty much already know they're not hard and cold. So now that's when the rubber has to meet the road, and you're like, oh, wow, what am I going to do? One is to really listen, don't do a lot of the talking and lecturing, but listen, ask questions. So where are you at? What do you think your parents are going to do? What support do you have? Ask those questions to draw them out. Also, make sure that you give them time. That's part of what we're there for. Remind them you have time to make a decision. You don't have to make a decision about this pregnancy today.
Right.
Most girls figure out that there might be a pregnancy at 6 weeks. Some of them at 4 weeks.
For 4 weeks fertilization or LMP?
LMP.
Okay.
Most girls figure it out. They miss their period and they start to figure out,
Right.
So they have time to think about this. They don't have to rush into a decision. As the friend, remind them of that. The other thing that they need to do is help them research their options. There's 800 and some abortion clinics across the country. There is 1,200 plus pregnancy resource or pregnancy medical centers across the country. So if you think, well, there's not one in my town, well, maybe not, but there's probably one within driving distance. If they can get to an abortion clinic, they can most likely get to a pregnancy resource center.
Right.
But if you really feel like you can't get them there, then how about just going online with them? And some of the things that you can do is Google search Pregnancy Resource Center, Google search Pregnancy Decision Line. Yes, pregnancy-decision-line.org, and pull that up and let them go through that themselves. There's people that they can chat with online. There's people that they can text or call that can go through all of their options like a pregnancy resource center would do. So I think that's really important for anybody because, you talked about how it could be your teenage listeners, but what about an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor down the street? It's not always just the young kids that find these things out. I know way too much about my kids' friends. So there's lots of people that are going to be faced with this at some point.
Right.
I just want to say something that really has impressed me about both the local pregnancy care center but nationally is the fact that I really did think that the only way that you could actually get the message out, that people could have a conversation, was through a one-on-one appointment, which for a lot of people, especially if they're teenagers, that might be a little scary. I just think it's so neat that groups like yours and groups like CareNet are doing these things. Like the text message thing is amazing, where you can anonymously text someone, and almost everybody now has a cell phone. Even if you're 15, you don't want to go set up an appointment, but you want to be able to dialogue with someone, you can chat online, you can do a text message conversation. And I think that's actually going to be very, very helpful for a lot of our listeners, especially in maybe more rural areas where they don't have a car, they can't actually get to a pregnancy center. If they've got a computer, if they've got a cell phone, they can even make a difference.
In your view, what are some of the most common mistakes that well-meaning pro-life people might make when they're trying to help a girl in this situation?
Well-meaning pro-life people? I think that they oftentimes the first place they go is the God card. They play the religious view. How can you do this? I think the other thing they typically do is they start arguing life in the womb right off the bat. And I think that again, we're negating her, the woman. We have to remember that she is life and she is important and she has value. I am so pro-woman that the pro-choice end of the spectrum would be, it would drive them crazy if they really knew how pro-women I am.
Right.
And I think that when we love her, then we are vicariously loving that child.
Right. So the pro-life person listening to this is thinking to themselves, but wait a minute, talking to her about life in the womb and maybe also God is like the way to truly love her. So how people understand what you're seeing?
Well, I think that they pull those cards and they do all the talking and they're trying to convince and to change a mind before they show her that I care about you. And how are you doing? And as they begin to care about her, she's going to open up. Then you can begin to ask her those questions and you end up with the life in the womb discussion and you end up with where does God fit into this for you? It's not that you don't go there. You just don't go there first.
You're listening first, not just giving them long lecture sessions.
For anybody who's heard the shows that we've done with anyone from Justice for All, this is very
we
familiar.
We talk about asking questions all the time. This is not new.
It's applicable to everything.
But it's applicable to this too. I think it's really important. I know some sidewalk counselors. I know quite a few sidewalk counselors, and they have varying levels of experience and training and different techniques. And I want to ask you about something that at least one person I know does. I probably know a few that do this, where they'll be outside of an abortion clinic trying to talk to these girls. And they'll actually offer money or even adopting their baby for them. What do you think about that approach?
Well, pregnancy resource centers in our center, our staff and volunteers it's against our policies and procedures for us to adopt any client's child or for us to offer any money at any time to any client.
Why?
And the money to any time, any client is even for bus fare.
Really?
Yeah. Or because they don't have food. We want to connect them to resources to help them with that, but we don't want them ever to feel like we're buying their decision. We also don't ever want them to feel like we have an ulterior motive, like we want this baby, so I'm going to care for you so that I can have this baby.
Right.
And it to them, that ulterior motive means that you really don't care about me. And I think that we have to remember that. When they come in and we talk about the adoption plan, if they're open to adoption, then they're going to get a sheet that gives them 3 or 4 different agencies, and we can sit there with them while they make the phone call, but they have to reach out, because we're going to encourage to educate and empower them to make a decision.
Right.
And we never want them to think that there's an ulterior motive.
But see, the sidewalk counselor is probably going to say, but Kristi, by offering to adopt her baby, I'm showing that, that's the least selfish thing I could do. I'm showing I don't have any ulterior motives. I just really, really love her, or else I wouldn't be offering to take care of her, her child for 18 years.
I don't know, because she's in this crisis pregnancy. She loves that child oftentimes. She just doesn't know how she's going to be able to manage. So she's thinking, I care about this baby. I care about this situation, and you want to take what belongs to me? And honestly, these girls oftentimes feel like going through a pregnancy and giving birth to a child and then handing it over to somebody else is way too traumatic for them to go through. In their mind, they would rather terminate a pregnancy than go through that bonding process, because I think they know that that's going to be a process, that they're going to end up at 9 months wishing they could have this baby, but then they're connected to the guy, or they can't afford the baby. So saying I'll take it does not feel good to her.
Right. Okay. So those are some of the things not to do. What are the best things that pro-life people can do besides listening and asking questions? Or is there anything else that pro-life people ought to be thinking about if they're in this situation?
I think thinking that once she's made a decision for life and she's going to either parent or make an adoption plan, to remember that she continues to need your support in one way or another. That isn't the time to say, oh, yay, good, we're there. That's the time to come alongside her with resources, with classes and parenting, with somebody to listen to her. How many times do we throw even a baby shower and then lose touch with that girl and never check in? If she chooses to parent, does she need a night to go out with her friends once a month while you have her child so she can go to the movies?
Or go on a date or something.
Yeah, right. It's true that once she gets to the end of a pregnancy and has a baby, she usually has a support system. Even the family that were pushing for an abortion is thankful now for the new life in their family, for the new grandchild, the new niece, the new nephew, whatever it is. So she will end up with more support than she thinks she's going to have on the onset. Usually. This is the typically.
Right.
There's always a few that it's just hard, just all the way around. Never gets easy. But just consider walking with her much longer than that decision-making process.
We got a question from a woman named Kim Payton, who's the executive director of the Women's Care Clinic in Danville, Illinois, when she heard that we were doing this show. And so this is what she's interested in hearing you talk about. She said, how about dispelling the myth that you couldn't possibly continue a pregnancy and be a college student at the same time? That one drives me crazy. It is so insulting to women. Young women can multitask, online course options are plentiful, and adoption is a great solution if she decides she isn't ready to parent. Can you speak to that?
Well, I finished my education as a parent.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did. I was pregnant before we got married. It wasn't what I would consider a crisis pregnancy, but I still needed to finish school. And it's hard work. Anytime you parent, you've added something to your agenda, right?
A lot
to your agenda.
Right.
I have 4 children now.
Yeah.
But I think that and I think that our girls, they get that. They know, but you have to show them, look, your goals, you should keep them right where they're at. Just recognize that it might be a little harder, a little less sleep, and that it might take you a little bit longer. You don't get rid of those goals. You just adjust them accordingly.
We've talked about what do you do if the woman, if your friend chooses life. What do you do after that? You don't just, it's all done now. You're still there, loving her, supporting her. What if she doesn't make the choice that you're hoping for? What if she does choose to have the abortion? Speak to that issue.
Well, I think that it's really important that just like whether she chooses life and chooses to parent or make an adoption plan, if she chooses to terminate that pregnancy, she's going to need you as well. She needs your care. She needs your support. She needs to know that she's not dead to you. And we need to continue to walk with people, whichever choice they make. We need to continue to walk with them.
If you're interested in more of that discussion, you can go to prolifepodcast.net and click on the episode archives button. We did a show called Should Pro-Life People Have Pro-Choice Friends? And we did an entire 30-minute discussion on this idea that is controversial to some, whether pro-life people should even be friends with pro-choice people, even after they've debated it for a year or two and they still haven't changed, so you still be friends with them. I think it's a really important discussion. So you can go to prolifepodcast.net and find that episode. Kristi Burkhart is the executive director of the Fresno Pregnancy Care Center. Their websites are Care for My Body, the number 4, careformybody.com, and careforpcc.com.
That's it.
I'm Josh Brom. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.
You've been watching Life Report, Pro-Life Talk, Real World Answers. Life Report is produced by Right to Life of Central California. Visit their website at fresnoprolife.org.